Starting off this list in our number 10 spot, we have rabbit telepathy. This is a document that originally comes to us from 1975, but it was declassified in 2004. Located on the CIA website as a Department of Defense document, it detailed a variety of, quote, Soviet and Czechoslovakian parapsychology research that was done from the end of World War II through to the Cold War era. One of the most grisly and truly unbelievable experiments that were conducted that was listed on this document occurred in 1956. Basically, they were trying to use rabbits to communicate with submarines, which is definitely just bizarre on a regular level, but of course the way in which they conducted this experiment was wrong and inhumane and truly just very cruel. Just a little heads up, if you're sensitive to animal stuff, I would maybe just go ahead and skip over this point. So for the test, they would take a mother rabbit who had recently just had bunnies. They would keep the mother in a lab on shore, and then they would take the bunnies down with them into the submarine. Slowly, one by one, they would take the life of the bunnies, and each time they did, the mother rabbit's brain would produce a detectable and recordable reactioning. Is this one of the worst things I've ever heard? Yes. What's even worse is that the report then goes on to say that other examples of, quote, animal telepathy research continued into the 1970s, and that it included other animals such as dogs, bears, birds, insects, and fish. I can't imagine they were any different, but let's just hope that these other tests weren't quite so cruel and inhumane.
Number 9. Alien bones. Captured on August 14th, 2014 by the Curiosity rover, this photo appears to show something on the surface of Mars that could chill you to the bone. A femur on the surface of the red planet. Many conspiracy theorists and alien enthusiasts alike hopped onto this to show it as proof that there was once life on Mars, or even that humans had been there before on some sort of secret mission that went awry. NASA has gone on the record to say that it's not a thigh bone, but just a rock that happened to be shaped that way after erosion from wind or water, which we have proven existed at one point. But come on. If it really was a bone, do you think that they'd tell us? Though I'm inclined to go with the scientists on this one, it would be kinda cool if we had proof of aliens on Mars. If you think there are aliens out there, hit the like and subscribe buttons to help us bring you the most amazing videos on them. Number 8. Eye of Sauron. The Rings of Power just finished its first season as I'm recording this video, and since I still have Tolkien on the brain, this photo of the Fomalhaut system made the cut. A relatively young system at 440 million years old. For comparison, our sun is about 4.5 billion years old. Fomalhaut and its surrounding disk of space dust have been the subject of a lot of controversy in the astronomical community. The images captured interest scientists not only because they look like they came straight from Mordor, but because of the zombie planet that has been tricky to find. The photos taken show that the dust ring is not centered around the star, but is shifted and elongated into the eye shape, which indicates something of large mass on the outer parts of the system, which scientists believed could be a Saturn-sized planet. Investigations have been conflicting over the past few years, with researchers believing on and off that the planet exists, and with Hubble images being inconclusive, which is why we call it a zombie planet, because it keeps coming back to life in a way amongst researchers. The system may have gotten its strange ring shape from all of the comet activity as well, with over 2,000 comet impacts daily, many of those comets being over 1 kilometer wide. That would definitely kick up a lot of dust, so one does not simply walk into Fomalhaut. Number 7. Sunken. Okay, I threw this one in because it's currently spooky season while I record this, and having a jack-o'-lantern sun on the list couldn't be passed up. In 2014, the Solar Dynamics Observatory captured this creepy photo of the sun smiling right at us, like its features had been carved right out of a pumpkin. Solar flares and activity on the sun can be quite unpredictable, and the fact that it lined up to look like this is pretty cool. I just hope that there isn't some giant alien up there carving into our sun to decorate their intergalactic porch. But if that's the case, what are we gonna dress up Earth as? If Earth had a Halloween costume, what would it be? Let me know in the comments. Number 6. Greater pumpkin galaxies. Sticking with the Halloween theme, 120 million light years away in the Canis Major constellation, these two galaxies, called NGC 2292 and 2293, have earned a much cooler name, the Greater Pumpkin Galaxies. Because of their orange color and the fact that they look like a jack-o'-lantern, these galaxies doomed to collide in what we will see as slow motion make for a pretty spectacular image. Not to mention that NASA released the photos on Halloween a few years ago. Though it may be a fun Halloween-themed image, there is a scary truth about them. They're they're on track to collide with each other. And as the two galaxies draw closer, they begin to spin around one another and could eventually form one single spiral galaxy. But when that happens, there will be some cosmic consequences. Things smashing into each other at ludicrous speeds and exploding out into the darkness with the force of many nuclear bombs. But we don't actually know what will happen until it does. While some may say it reminds them of the Great Pumpkin, I would say that it looks more like a 100,000 light year across Jack Skellington. Number 5. The face of Mars. This freaky famous photo was taken by the Viking 1 orbiter in 1976 and shows us what is very clearly a face embedded in the surface of Mars. A massive one at that, judging by the scale of what's around it. It very clearly has 2 eyes, a nose, and a mouth. Uncanny, really, especially for being what NASA has called a cosmic coincidence, because with enough time and space, literally anything can happen. When investigated again in 2001 with a better camera, it was not to be seen. Was it just a mound of rocks and dirt that was blown or moved away, or was it something more sinister, watching us from the red planet, not knowing that we were finally looking back? Number 4. Black hole in the Milky Way. Black holes, one of the biggest driving forces in the cosmos. These places of pure darkness were once stars that shone bright in the sky, but when they died, instead of going supernova and exploding into a blast of color and energy, they collapsed in on themselves, creating a singularity so dense that it sucks everything around it in, with a force that nothing can escape, not even light. And while this may sound scary, they are incredibly necessary for our understanding of the universe to function. In fact, there are a few in our galaxy, but the biggest is Sagittarius A, the supermassive black hole at the center of the Milky Way. This is the second image ever captured of a black hole, and it's insane that we've developed the technology to be able to find and photograph them. Sag A sits at the center of our galaxy and is the reason why it spins and has its signature spiral shape. But the scary part is that it is not only spinning our galaxy, but consuming it, adding one more way that our galaxy can meet its demise. Not sure I'd rather that or colliding with another galaxy. Either way, none of us are going to be around to see it. Number 3. Hand of God. This is what's known as a pulsar wind nebula, and what you're seeing is a cloud of material that was ejected from a dying star, captured by X-ray telescopes functioning at different energy levels, lower energy detections appearing in red and green, and higher ones in blue. While we can explain what this stellar specter is made of, we can't quite figure out why it takes the shape it does, and NASA is still wondering if the pulsar particles are interacting in a specific way to make it look like a hand. When the new readings were taken, the ones appearing blue, they realized that one part of the hand is actually shrinking at a different speed than the rest, implying that the two areas were physically different, and making us all wonder what the hand is reaching towards. Number 2. Ghost Nebula. Known formally as SH2-136, really rolls off the tongue. This reflection nebula has some pretty startling shapes appearing within it. A reflection nebula does exactly what you think. It reflects light from nearby stars and galaxies. The energy from stars nearby is not strong enough to ionize the gas of the nebula, but it is enough to illuminate the dust and make it visible to us. Looking at the picture, it's a no-brainer why it's earned its much cooler name, the Ghost Nebula. You can see little figures waving from the edge of the space cloud. They even appear to have horns. I'm not sure what that's about, but I'm here for it. Give me all the spooky space specters. Again, this is just one of those cosmic coincidences that we can't explain, and that if we existed at any other place in the universe, we may not see. So we're pretty lucky, I guess. But let's hope our luck holds out for our final entry. Number 1. Roaming black holes. Now, I told you about black holes, those things that suck in and destroy anything that comes near, even light, with no chance to escape. But they are pretty detectable, and we should be able to avoid them since they're such a huge cosmic entity, right? Well, what if I told you that there are many out there that are near impossible to detect, because they're moving? That's right. Known as roaming black holes, these death spheres fly through our universe, devouring everything in their path. Only detectable by fluctuations in mass and light, they were most likely two black holes that attracted each other, then slingshotted off one another and were flung out into space. But here's the kicker. The Hubble telescope actually detected one closer than anyone would want, in our own Milky Way. While pointed near the center of the galaxy at Sagittarius A, a fluctuation in light and space shows that we may have one of these devouring our galaxy, and we would never see it coming until it was too late. So there you go, one of my, and possibly now one of your fears, roaming black holes. Space is crazy and terrifying. It is absolutely baffling and will never cease to impress me the technology and knowledge we have developed in our time as a species to investigate beyond our own planet, especially since at the end of the day, we're all just monkeys with car keys. Number 10. Zombie star. While the idea of a human coming back to life and hunting for brains is spooky, to me the knowledge that dead stars can do the same, even the eating each other part, is both both scary and exciting. This is Tycho, a former white dwarf, which is a star that has, quote, died and gone supernova, exploding into a fantastic show of cosmic energy and matter with the power and brightness of a billion suns. And usually a white dwarf will stay dead, but not in a binary system where there's more than one star at the center. Sometimes these previously deceased stars can come back to life. And they do this by feeding off the energy and material from their neighboring star and powering themselves back up, not unlike a zombie eating somebody's brains. Scientists believe that this may have to do with what they call dark energy as well, which theoretically makes up about 3/4 of our universe, but since we have yet to truly detect or understand it, these zombie stars will remain a mystery. But they look super cool, right?
Number 9. Injuries. A Freedom of Information Act request caused 1,500 pages of UFO reports and evidence to be declassified and leaked to the public. And what the pages contained was pretty shocking for those who read it. A percentage of the pages included information of how people who reported seeing UFOs and aliens had been legitimately physically affected, real physical evidence that something unexplained had happened to them. Some of the reports included things like burns, which could have been caused by the jets of a UFO or potential face-to-face alien interference. Bafflingly, they also confirmed that women who had come into contact with aliens shortly fell mysteriously pregnant after the event, with no explanation as to why they were suddenly with child. Yes, we all know by now how mommy and daddy make babies, but that apparently wasn't a factor in these cases. Alien babies potentially on the way. Number 8. FLIR. Alongside these 1,500 documents, 3 separate videos were released that appeared to show UFOs being spotted by the United States military, so let's take a look. The first is titled FLIR and was originally filmed back in 2004 when the USS Nimitz was flying off the coast of Southern California. There had apparently already been an unidentified aircraft in the area for up to a week before the video was filmed. Off the coast, they spotted a large oval-shaped object, estimating it to be about 40 feet long and white in color. 4 people on the craft saw the object for a running total of about 5 minutes, although the video is only just over a minute. They were able to track it using their advanced infrared camera, and due to the object's shape, they nicknamed it the Tic Tac. All these videos to this day have no real explanation for what the UFOs actually were. Number 7. Gimbal. Next up on the list we have the video titled Gimbal, which was leaked alongside the last one I just talked about. This one's different because we can hear the people in the jet reacting to what they're seeing. They use a similar infrared camera and follow the object that was flying over the East Coast. At first, they comment that it might be some kind of drone, but then note that it is fighting against incredibly strong winds and appearing to not be affected by it at all. They even comment that there are other unidentified crafts in the area, but we don't actually see them as it's locked onto the target. What's interesting about this one, as the people in the video point out, is that it moves in an incredibly strange fashion, appearing to rotate and move around despite the heavy winds it's apparently fighting against. My favorite part of this is that there's one guy calmly stating facts about it while the other cusses and yells in excitement. Is that a f***ing drone, dude? Number 6. Go fast. The third and final leaked video is probably the best of the bunch, as the video starts before they have managed to lock onto the target and you can see it moving. The video is pretty correctly titled Go Fast because this thing is moving incredibly fast, like definitely faster than anything else that could have been an easy explanation. It's zipping over the top of the water as they try to get their camera to lock onto it, and when they finally do, they start cheering because of just how difficult it was due to how fast the object was moving. Their comments are a mix of excitement and confusion in regards to what they've managed to find, saying, "Look at that thing fly," while also going, "What the f*** is that thing?" People often like to write off UFOs as some sort of secret military practice vessels or training project, so what can it be when the military itself doesn't know what they saw? Number 5. Pentagon Report. In May of this year, the Pentagon appeared on a panel where they discussed UFOs, and they revealed just how much information they have about the situation. They said that there are around 400 separate reports of unidentified flying objects coming from military military personnel. So while we do have the 3 leaked videos, there are likely even more locked up in a safe somewhere that offer convincing evidence of the existence of aliens. The Deputy Director of Naval Intelligence said, "We've seen an increasing number of unauthorized and/or unidentified aircraft or objects, and military control training areas and training ranges and other designated airspace. Reports of sightings are frequent and continuous." Well, it definitely sounds like he's trying to sweep it under the rug as someone just like flying a drone illegally onto a military base or something. I think it's safe to say the military have the resources to know if it were something as simple as that. So their confusion and uncertainty makes it seem more and more like aliens are among us. Number 4. Live stream. In 2016, an incident occurred during NASA's live feed from a camera mounted on the International Space Station that pointed towards the Earth. You can see the Earth's curve, and one viewer noticed that for a short moment, a massive bright object can be seen falling towards the planet. But as quickly as it comes, it's gone as the live feed conveniently cuts out and experiences technical difficulties. The video was posted to YouTube, and people immediately started theorizing that NASA had intentionally cut the live feed at this moment to cover up the fact that this bright shape was a UFO, or at least something alien in origin. Many people noted how suspicious this was and started calling out NASA for their actions, while other people were saying that it was just a meteor or some hunk of space junk. A spokesperson for NASA said that the cameras are controlled automatically, and it had simply passed out of range, causing the video to be cut off. But that's just what they want you to think. Number 3. Alien junk. An astrophysicist from Harvard wrote a book that was titled Extraterrestrial: The First Sign of Intelligent Life Beyond Earth, and it was about how he believed that an object that passed through the solar system in 2017 was actually a piece of alien technology, bringing forward the theory that NASA is actually just ignoring real evidence of alien existence because they're just brushing it off as some random space junk. Whether they believe it really is space junk or they're just trying to make us think that that's what it is. The object was long and not shaped like any known comet we've ever seen before. It also apparently accelerated away from the sun, and he believes it ended up in our solar system accidentally thanks to aliens, saying, "A buoy, a grid of pods for communication, other intelligent living organisms, defunct technology, or discarded technological trash. These are all plausible explanations." Number 2. Buzz Aldrin. Buzz Aldrin was one of a handful of astronauts who were aboard the Apollo 11, the first spaceflight that put humans on the moon with one small step for man. During their journey, however, they saw more than just the moon. Apparently, they may have seen a UFO. They reported seeing large objects that appeared to follow alongside them. It was confirmed not to be the upper stage of the rocket that would have been detached, as this was 6,000 miles away from them at the time. The event was kept under wraps, and nobody talked about it until it was brought up years later, sweeping it under the rug as simply a panel that had disconnected from the ship. But again, that's just what they want you to think. The claims coming from a senior NASA scientist who said he had just called up Buzz on the phone and he had agreed. Did you really talk to him on the phone, senior NASA scientist? Did you really? Number 1. ISS report. Alright, this one's not actually NASA because it actually comes from a Russian astronaut aboard the International Space Station, and I'm just gonna count it because it's a pretty cool video. He was on board the ISS using his camera to record the southern lights, which are the same as the northern lights but in the south. It's a time-lapse recording, and for a brief moment you can see a line of large bright lights moving across the sky. In the tweet the astronaut posted, he referred to them as space guests, saying that while it was only a few seconds in the time-lapse, it was actually around 52 seconds in real time. Some people suggest that it may have been some kind of meteor or satellite, but I'm actually a licensed professional and I say that it was aliens. Number 10. UAP report. Alien fans and skeptics alike were pretty shocked when just a few months ago the National Aeronautics and Space Administration, or NASA, said that they believed in aliens. Well, actually they said they were going to be investigating unidentified flying objects, but close enough. While some people did believe that this was NASA saying, hey, we believe in aliens, it was actually them announcing they were going to launch a study into UAPs, or unidentified aerial phenomenon, because I guess they're just too good to say UFO. The scientist coordinating the study said, over the decades, NASA has answered the call to tackle some of the most perplexing mysteries we know of, and this is no different. In the report, they said that a good chunk of confirmed unidentified objects seem to show evidence that they were made using advanced technology that humans just don't have yet. Number 9. The Kecksburg File. On the night of December 9th, 1965, a giant fireball which caused a sonic boom streaked across the sky before crashing into the woods in Kecksburg, Pennsylvania. Military immediately arrived and sealed off the area, hauling off a massive object the size of a bus to their Air Force base nearby in Ohio. The Pentagon immediately tried to cover it up, saying it was a meteorite, releasing no details about the incident. But in 2003, NASA went on to say that it was not a satellite, but 2 years later in 2005 they said, yeah, actually it was a satellite, just don't worry about it. The cover-up seemed never ending, and it just led more and more people to become interested in finding out the truth of the Kecksburg file. A Freedom of Information Act was then started to get the file looked into again, and the judge threw away NASA's attempts to have the lawsuit thrown out. So in 2007 they announced they would be reopening the Kecksburg file, but they claimed that a majority of the files had been destroyed or lost, and they never released what it actually was that crashed that day. Number 8. Astronaut. Like I said in the first point, there is allegedly a conspiracy within NASA to cover up any of their employees or former employees talking about the fact that they have had alien experiences. But as I have mentioned in other parts of this list, there are actually a handful of astronauts who have spoken out about potentially alien encounters. Leland Melvin is probably best known for taking his astronaut photos with his rescued dogs, but what you're probably not familiar with is the fact that he has shared his alien experiences on Twitter. He received a question on Twitter that read, "What's your outlook about the existence of intelligent alien life living in our solar system? Have you ever witnessed a UFO?" And Leland went on to respond with, "I have not seen one in space or on the ground, but thought I saw something organic/alien-like floating out of the payload bay. Randy Bresnik and I called the ground to ask what it could be, and they said it was ice that had broken off of the Freon hoses. Translucent, curved, organic looking, with an alien emoji at the end." Of course, he explains it by saying it was just ice, but that was probably just NASA feeding them an easy cover-up. Number 7. Moon crash. The Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter is similar to the Mars Orbiter that I have talked about before. It basically watches over the moon and takes pictures of its surface. Earlier this year, they released a photo that had many people scratching their heads and insisting that NASA was doing yet another cover-up. The photo shows the surface of the moon with what is called a double impact crater. While the moon is covered in tons of craters, this one is unique for this reason. The evidence of the dozens of feet wide indentation seems to show that some sort of man-made spaceship crashed into the moon and left the divot. Many people on social media believe this to be evidence that some sort of alien craft had hit the moon, but NASA tried to shut everyone up by claiming it was just an out-of-control rocket. While they seem to know it was a rocket, they admitted that they don't have any idea where it came from or what its original path was intended to be. So even if it's not aliens, it's still pretty confusing. Number 6. Alien photo. Mars is one of the main planets that many people believe could be host to aliens, hence the term Martians and all the fictitious media that includes alien creatures visiting from Mars. On February 4th of this year, one person online dug up a photo that the Perseverance rover had taken on Mars back in 2021. The title of the blog post being, "Alien Figure Watching Mars Rover, 100% Proof of Life UFO Sighting News." The image seems to show a dark figure laying on a large Martian rock. It's distinctly human-shaped and darkly colored and stands out from anything else in the area or what we've seen in previous pictures. The man explains in his blog post everything that he believes it to be. There is a person laying down watching the NASA Mars rover from a safe distance away. The person is about 1 foot tall, 0.3 meters, and is lying down. Pinkish upper chest, neck and face, reddish hair, wearing a dark suit, but has a gray object over one shoulder. Looks like a backpack of some sort. There are even footprints behind the person leading up to the location they chose to lay down at. If you don't agree with that, then what do you think it could be? Number 5. Mercury UFO. Project Mercury was NASA's first ambitious space mission, which took place back in the early 1960s, which included 6 manned space flights. But that isn't what we're going to be focusing on. One of the Mercury probes sent out into space took a picture of what appears to clearly be a UFO. A photo that a NASA blogger found in an old disk from the mission that took place in December 1960 appears to show a strange shape that looks like it could be an alien spacecraft. While many arguments against UFOs are that they're just random space junk, this was at the beginning of NASA's steps out into space, so there really couldn't have been that many rocket pieces and broken panels floating around. The blogger says that he believes this is aliens wanting to watch one of humanity's biggest steps, not worrying about being seen because this particular craft didn't actually have any humans on it. Number 4. Deleted UFO. This same blogger also recently found evidence of NASA purposefully covering up and deleting archival photos that appear to show evidence of aliens. He found a photo of what appears to be a large, dark, rectangular alien ship flying past the sun, and he also found that NASA is trying to hide it. On his blog, he said, "I found a huge rectangle UFO shooting past our sun, and it's got to be several miles across or more. I tried to find it on another NASA site, but I got an error message. Then I tried using official European Space Administration software, and again, error message. Then I went into the individual photos online and input my own URL, but these photo times do not exist. That's 3 different sources all erased from existence. I found it at a 4th source." He says that he won't reveal this other source as he doesn't want it taken down as well. There are 20 different photos in a row that all show the unidentified craft, and he calls NASA out for never saying anything about it. Number 3. Mars photos. I talked about this on a separate list, but I also wanted to touch on it here too. We've taken a look at one Mars rover photo already, but I want to dive into just how many of these there are. People are constantly picking out unexplained and potentially alien things popping up in these photos of the red planet. One of the most baffling recent images is this one that appears to show some sort of carved out entryway which people believe must lead to some sort of alien hideout on the planet, looking too precise to have been caused by natural weather and environment conditions like NASA claims. There have also been many rocks that appear to be much more than just rocks, as they stand out from anything else in the photos, almost looking like a sort of coral growing out from the ground through the dust. There are a lot of them, and NASA has attempted to explain away all these photos, but there is still just a lot of mystery there. Number 2. The Calvine photo. This one is similar to the Kecksburg file in the way that it is also a UFO encounter from many decades ago that NASA tried to hide away by claiming it was lost. The photo was taken in August 1990 by 2 hikers near Calvine in Scotland. It shows what is clearly a large diamond-shaped vessel flying through the sky, being trailed by another airplane. They took pictures and said it appeared to be about 30 meters long. It apparently then shot straight up into the sky and disappeared, never to be seen again. The photo was first given to the newspaper and then handed over to the Ministry of Defense, and then it was never discussed again, and the photo apparently went missing. In October of 2021, the Scottish Operations Records book was checked, and there was no account of anything having been spotted in the sky on that day. One determined individual, however, managed to track down the lost photo, and about it they said, "The Calvine photograph stands as one of the biggest mysteries in UFO history. Finally revealed after 32 years, it shows that answers only bring new questions." Number 1. Space nudes. In May of this year, it was revealed to the public that NASA was going to be sending a message out to aliens, calling it the Beacon in the Galaxy. It's a binary coded message that includes details about our planet and human life that is going to be shot into space for anybody to find. One of these images was revealed to be an image of what a genetically male and female human look like, and yes, it has all the details. It also includes a diagram of gravity so aliens know which part of us is the top and which is the bottom. Other images included are the solar system diagram, a map of Earth's landmass, and depictions of things like mountains and trees. So yes, NASA is actually sending our nudes out to space. The fact that they are doing this shows that at least a small part of the organization believes that aliens are out there to receive this message. Number 10. Contractor. A former NASA contractor went on video to reveal the fact that NASA has been keeping secrets from us. She says she both viewed and heard evidence that 3 NASA astronauts said that they had seen unidentified flying objects land on the moon, but that these events were later covered up in an operation that was codenamed Santa Claus, a fitting name as NASA wants you to believe that UFOs are just about as real as Santa. She says that she had clearance to enter Building 8 at NASA's Johnson Space Center back in the 1970s. She says that she received information over lunch from officials that if anyone was ever caught exposing aliens as real, they would lose their pensions, and apparently one person in the past had not only lost their pension, but had disappeared off the face of the earth. In the video, she said, "They didn't threaten to kill me, but I got the message I shouldn't talk about it." She apparently witnessed everything from employees being forced to burn photographic evidence and seeing official pictures being airbrushed to hide UFOs. Number 9. Edgar Mitchell. Astronaut Edgar Mitchell landed on the moon with the Apollo 14 mission, and he also believed that aliens helped prevent a conflict between the United States and Russia. He claimed that top military officials were hiding evidence of unidentified flying objects, and the fact that they were apparently often spotted hovering over White Sands testing range in New Mexico. In 2015, he said, "White Sands was a testing ground for atomic weapons, and that's what the extraterrestrials were interested in. They wanted to know about our military capabilities. My own experience talking to people has made it clear the ETs had been attempting to keep us from going to war and help create peace on Earth." He stated that the military had given him loads of information on aliens and their interactions with Earth, and after he left NASA, he dedicated his life and studies to looking into extraterrestrial existence. Number 8. Mars photos. A man named Richard Hoagland believes that NASA knows a lot more about Mars than they're letting on. He believes that astronauts have been to Mars and that there's a plethora of evidence of alien life on Mars that NASA is insistent on covering up. During the Viking 1 orbit in 1976, NASA released various photographs of the surface of Mars, and some of them seemed to show various different structures and one that apparently even looked like the Sphinx. This led people to believe that these structures had been built by aliens who lived on the Red Planet. Years later, in 1998, NASA took more pictures to debunk the theory, showing only rocks, but Richard and others believe that this is them trying to hide the truth and shrinking the structures that were previously on the planet. He also pulled up a NASA commissioned report from 1960 that recommended any future discoveries of alien life be hidden from the public so as not to disrupt the evolutionary flow of the century. Number 7. Sun object. Last video I talked about NASA cutting off their ISS feed when people believed that they saw a UFO falling towards the Earth. This one is a similar scenario, except it came from footage of the sun. In May of 2012, a YouTube user posted a video of a mysterious object seen flying near the sun in NASA's broadcast. The video zooming in on the pyramid-shaped object that many believe to be some sort of alien craft flying near the sun. A day later, NASA shut down the video feed. In a second video, the user said, "This is a cover-up to prevent us from seeing these things again. NASA must have seen this video and started making plans to change the way you and I are allowed to view it. NASA are clearly trying to stop us looking at the sun." Alien deniers may say that this is just some sort of camera glitch or sun flare, but I think we all know the truth. People telling you not to look at the sun is actually just propaganda so we don't see the aliens. And I'm just gonna say quickly for legal reasons that I do not actually condone staring into the sun. Number 6. The Cube. This also isn't the only case of NASA cutting off the sun livestream after suspicious activity. It happened just this year in May as well. On May 2nd at around 1 in the afternoon, a large black cube appeared to come out of the sun, visible for about 2 seconds. A glitch then appeared on the live stream covering a large part of it, and after it clears, the cube is gone. An expert posted this to YouTube going over the footage and claims that this is evidence of some sort of alien spaceship coming out of the sun. Perhaps they have a secret alien base in there. Also, I say expert because he is a self-proclaimed extraterrestrial expert, and honestly, I'm gonna start calling myself that as well. You guys are watching a video from an expert now, people. Most people in the comments claim that this was just some sort of square-shaped solar flare, while another even claimed it was the manifestation of an angel gaining power from the sun. Number 5. Evidence scale. This one is not so much leaked, but was instead part of an announcement that NASA was going to become more serious about trying trying to discover life on other planets. They announced that they are going to have a scale to measure extraterrestrial evidence so that it's not as black and white as life or no life. Proposed by NASA Chief Scientist Jim Green, the scale includes 7 different levels, which ranks evidence of life based on their environment and the opinions of the scientific community at large. The highest levels on the scale are of course level 6, verifying signs of life with several different instruments, and level 7, and on different locations on the world. They said in a statement, "We need a better way to share the excitement of our discoveries and demonstrate how each discovery builds on the next, so that we can bring the public and other scientists along on the journey. This new eagerness to bring people along on the journey of discovery could be a sign that they're warming us up to revealing aliens." Number 4. Meteorite. In 2011, a NASA scientist came out claiming that they had found legitimate evidence of alien life, this being from fossils inside a meteorite that landed on Earth. Richard Hoover said that he found evidence of what is basically microscopic little alien bugs, or as the science people call it, filaments and other structures that appear to be fossils of algae known as cyanobacteria, little alien bugs. Laboratory tests done found no evidence that they were the remains of Earth-based organisms, despite being slightly similar to organisms that have been found in the waterways of Spain. Hoover says that the lack of nitrogen, which is essential for life on Earth, proves that they are the remains of extraterrestrial life forms that grew on the parent bodies of the meteorites when liquid water was present, long before the meteorites entered the Earth's atmosphere. This isn't the first time that this sort of evidence has been found on meteorites, and it probably won't be the last. Number 3. Anonymous. We know that the infamous Gary McKinnon managed to hack into the NASA databases and find secret UFO pictures, but did you know that the group known as Anonymous did it as well? In 2017, they made a 12.5-minute long YouTube video where they claimed to have gained access to secret NASA information, telling people that NASA was covering up the discovery of alien life. They said that the organization had recently found 219 new planet candidates, 10 having very similar conditions to Earth. Because of this, the group came to believe that NASA was either incredibly close to finding alien life or had already found it. They also stated that this was a sign NASA was getting closer and closer to revealing the truth about aliens. And while many people brushed it off as being ridiculous, we now know that NASA has just revealed their new UFO study, so Anonymous may have been closer to the truth than we thought. Number 2. Black Knight Satellite. Alright, now let's get into some stuff that is a little more conspiratorial than usual, if that's even possible, and various different ways that people believe NASA is trying to cover stuff up, but apparently not doing a good enough job. There is a conspiracy that there is a satellite called the Black Knight Satellite, which was set up by aliens more than 12,000 years ago in order to spy on humans. Photos from the first shuttle trip to the International Space Station in 1998 appeared to show a large black object hovering over Earth, and people believed it was the first photographic evidence of the Black Knight satellite. All previous evidence from years before were just things like radio signals. They also believed that back in the early 1900s, Nikola Tesla actually picked up signals from the Black Knight. Whether or not you actually believe in the existence of the satellite spying on us apparently doesn't matter anymore, as it was reportedly shot down by the Illuminati in 2017. Number 1. Hollow Earth. Alright, this one's not so much about aliens, but trust me on this, I am a self-proclaimed extraterrestrial expert, okay? In 2016, one YouTube user suggested that NASA was trying to cover up the existence of something at the North and South poles. Old satellite images of Earth from space appear to apparently show some sort of a massive hole at each end of the Earth, what they claim to be an entrance. If you're not sold on the flat Earth theory, then let me introduce you to Hollow Earth. As its name suggests, the truth is apparently that the inside of the Earth is hollow and actually contains inner Earth complete with its own sun. Explorers have apparently seen the inner Earth firsthand when flying over the North Pole. So this is just a cool, crazy conspiracy, and it doesn't actually really relate to aliens, but I just wanted to talk about it. So as an alien expert, I'm just gonna say that the inner Earth Earth is actually where all the aliens live and they control us from the inside. Number 10. NASA hacked. So first off, how do things like this from NASA even manage to get leaked? Well, apparently by British guys like Gary McKinnon hacking into their system. Between the years 2001 and 2002, Gary broke into 97 different government computers, believing NASA was hiding signs of alien life because of thousands of pictures of UFOs he found hidden away. A former NASA employee had said that satellite images were checked for UFOs and deleted if they showed any evidence, and Gary decided he wanted to break into NASA in order to validate these claims. He says that he found 4 different folders titled filtered, unfiltered, processed, and raw. He says that his slow internet connection only made him able to download 1 image before he lost access to the rest of them, the picture apparently being a clear image of a cigar-shaped spacecraft. Gary believes that NASA is hiding a wealth of UFO evidence from the public.
In our number 9 spot today, we have Operation Washtub. This operation came to light in 2014 when documents became declassified and more people could learn about this Cold War era operation. Basically, this was a covert mission that had its sights set on Alaska. The plan detailed the training of different people who lived in Alaska. Like, we're talking just ordinary residents. They wanted to train these people to both code and decode, and a few other different spying tactics, which would have been so cool. I mean, I would have wanted to be picked so badly. Not that I would have even known it was happening, but you get what I mean. Basically, the plan was put in place in case the Soviet Union was to invade Alaska. Then these unsuspecting ordinary citizens would use their newly learned espionage techniques to get all the intel they could and secretly relay that information to high-ranking US officials. As we now know, of course, this invasion never occurred, so the contingency plan wasn't needed, but there were 89 lucky temporary agents who were trained just for this purpose, and I have never been more jealous in my entire life. In our number 8 spot today, we have Project Minaret. This is a document that became declassified in 2013 as a part of the National Security Archive's efforts. This historical document describes a sort of watch list of prominent Americans who were critical of the Vietnam War. The document explains that their overseas communications were tapped and listened into by the government from 1967 to 1973, and a quote from the document reads, quote, "President Johnson wanted to know if the domestic anti-war movement was receiving help from abroad." The project expanded so much that it went on to include more than 1,600 people, including civil rights leaders like Martin Luther King Jr., Whitney Young, and Muhammad Ali. There were also people like Democratic US Senator Frank Church of Idaho, Republican Senator Howard Baker of Tennessee, a New York Times columnist, and a Washington Post columnist. The surveillance began under President Johnson, but it continued on through to the Nixon administration. In the end, the only reason it was stopped was because Attorney General Elliot Richardson was concerned about its very doubtful and murky legality and decided that during the Watergate scandal that it probably would just be best to shut it down. I mean, they definitely had enough on their plate already at the time. In our number 7 spot today, we have Project Iceworm. This secret mission took place in the 1960s, and it was basically intended to build a series of mobile nuclear missile launch sites under the Greenland ice sheet, because this would then house medium-range missiles close enough that they would be able to strike targets within the Soviet Union. This project was called Project Iceworm, but there was another project called Camp Century. Basically, Camp Century was to test out Project Iceworm and see how likely it would be and how feasible it would be. So engineers went to work and created a network of underground tunnels and buildings that included places to stay, kitchen, a hall for hanging out, there were supply rooms, and even a communication center and a nuclear power plant. This was all kept as a super secret for a long time and was even kept from the Danish government for 7 years. In 1966, however, the project was cancelled because of the shifting ice. This created unstable conditions for the underground tunnels that are most likely crushed now, but still remain beneath the Arctic. In our number 6 spot today, we have the Pentagon crash. We have all heard about the devastating September 11th, 2001 attacks, but some of you might not know that on the day day, there were actually 4 separate coordinated attacks, all a part of the same plan, and one of those attacks was on the Pentagon. There was a photo that was previously classified but eventually has been released by the US government, and it shows the absolute devastation that was done by the commercial plane that crashed into the Pentagon. The plane was able to tear through all 5 rings that existed in the building. All of the people on board the plane that day, as well as 125 people that were in the building at the time, passed away in this horrible event. For obvious reasons, the initial photos of the Pentagon damage were withheld from the public or from circulating in the media, but now that they have been released, it just shows us all another side to that horrible, terrifying day. In our number 5 spot today, we have the UFO report. This photo is of a previously classified document from 1963. Although the document still has a lot of information that has been blacked out, the document is the description and report of an unidentified flying object or UFO encounter. This is said to have taken place over the desert of Nevada, and the report was written in detail in order to have a written record of the event. This document is said to be the authentic report from the FBI, which is exactly why some of the details have still been omitted, despite it being declassified. This might seem like less of a big deal now, as in this day and age we have declassified video footage of similar kinds of encounters, but for 1963 this was huge. As discussions of alien or extraterrestrial life is a big part of our modern society, this document shows that these things have been on our minds for many years now. In our number 4 spot today, we have Project 1794. This project was created with the goal to build a sort of saucer-type aircraft that would be designed to shoot down Soviet bombers. The program, which was created in the 1950s, was quite ambitious and had some pretty lofty goals. A team of engineers began trying to build a disc-shaped aircraft, but here's the real kicker. They wanted it to be capable of traveling at supersonic speeds at high altitudes. The documents about this project show that they wanted it to be able to travel at Mach 4, which is 4 times the speed of sound, and they wanted it to be able to reach an altitude of over 100,000 feet. At the time, the project was estimated to cost about $3 million, which is about $26 million today. In the end, the project was cancelled in 1961 because the craft failed tests and proved to be aerodynamically unstable, which of course would provide a whole slew of problems at high speeds, especially supersonic ones. In our number 3 spot today, we have the Manned Orbiting Laboratory. So for this one, this is a mission that was created in response to a Soviet Union secret mission called Almaz. Basically, this program, called the Manned Orbiting Laboratory, was run by the Air Force and the intelligence community's National Reconnaissance Office, and the goal of it was to spy on and throw the Soviet Union off track in space. Some of the documents in this mission have now been declassified, and according to them, one of the goals was to knock some of Moscow's satellites out of orbit or to fire projectiles at them. They even wanted to try and capture one of the Soviet satellites in space and then basically send it back down to Earth so that they could study it. That's so wild. And because of this, Moscow equipped their secret space station with a rapid-fire cannon in order to stop any of this from happening. I seriously feel like I'm watching some sort of space action movie right now. I can't believe that these are real things that happened and they were created in the 60s and 70s. In our number 2 spot today, we have the Lunic kidnapping. Don't worry, Lunic is not a person and instead is a Soviet lunar satellite that was kidnapped just for one night. This project honestly sounds like it was taken straight from a movie, and it has to do with the Great Space Race. In the early 1960s, the Soviet Union wanted to make it as clear as possible that they were winning the race to space, so they launched a multinational exhibition of their Lunic satellites, which became the first spacecraft to impact the moon's surface. And when the Luna 3 returned, it brought with it the first ever pictures of the moon's far side. It was a big deal, and it's safe to say that the US wanted to know everything that they could about it. Of course, the satellite was heavily guarded, but it was traveling from city to city for this exhibition, so undercover CIA agents went to work. Basically, they convinced the man who drove the transport truck to get some rest at a nearby hotel, and basically they would look after it for him while he rested. I'm sure it was a bit more complicated than this, but you get the gist. From here, the agents then took apart and photographed every single component of the thing before putting it back together and placing it back in the truck for its next tour date. There is no indication that before the operation became declassified that anyone outside of those involved knew what had happened that day, and I'm not gonna lie, this is a pretty hilarious plan, and the fact that it worked is both shocking and pretty impressive. In our number 1 spot today, we have Operation Paperclip. This operation began in 1946 when the President of the United States at the time, Harry Truman, authorized it. Basically, the entire point of it was to lure scientists from Nazi Germany over to the United States after the Second World War. This was done in an effort to aid the country in their post-war efforts, as well as to ensure that the valuable knowledge these people had would not end up in the hands of perhaps the Soviet Union or either side of the divided East and West Germany. Had it not been classified information at the time, this would have of course been highly controversial, as many of these people were involved in, and sometimes even leaders of that hateful party. Former President Truman stood by his decision, saying that because of the relations with the Soviet Union, quote, this had to be done and was done. Several of the scientists a part of this program were later investigated because of their former ties, but one was only ever tried out of the over 1,600. None of the Paperclip scientists were ever found guilty for any crimes either in the United States or in Germany. Perhaps the most famous of all of the Paperclip scientists was Wernher von Braun, who played a huge role in advancing NASA's Apollo missions. Starting off in our number 10 spot, we have Operation Midnight Climax. This experiment took place in the 1950s, and it was one of those mind control research projects that was sponsored by the CIA. This was actually just one experiment that was a part of Project MKUltra. So basically they wanted to study the effects of LSD, but instead of finding willing participants, which let's be honest probably wouldn't have been that difficult, instead they used non-consenting people who were lured to safe houses by sex workers who were being paid by the CIA, and then once at these safe houses they were slipped the drug and monitored from behind a one-way glass. For over a decade, the project gave the government more knowledge about the drug itself and what it does to the mind. It gave the knowledge about surveillance technology and even sexual blackmail. In the end, the project was shut down in 1965, but people don't forget, and the damage was already done. In our number 9 spot today, we have the Gateway Process. This document was originally published in 1983 and was declassified 20 years later, and it was prepared by Wayne M. McDonnell at the request of the commanding officer in the U.S. Army Intelligence and Security Command. Basically, McDonnell was tasked with assessing the Gateway Experience, which is a meditation training that was meant to instruct people on how to harness their electromagnetic energy waves, and it trained them how to direct their own brain waves and use them to detach from time and space. You can in fact still find and buy this program, should you wish to. The analysis or assessment by Wayne tackles a wide variety of subjects, all the way from astral projection to quantum physics and so much more, but at the end you're pretty much left with the fact that, quote, there is a sound, rational basis in terms of physical science parameters for considering Gateway to be plausible in terms of its essential objectives. But are you ready for the unsettling part? He also warns that those using the techniques for, quote, terrestrial information gathering trips or other operations of the like should be, quote, intellectually prepared to react to pulsable encounters with intelligent, non-corporeal energy forms when time-space boundaries are exceeded. That's enough for me to tap out without even trying it. In our number 8 spot today, we have the cattle crimes. Okay, so these documents reveal a super grim FBI investigation that took place in the 1970s at the request of US Senators Floyd Haskell of Colorado and Carl Curtis of Nebraska. I guess there was some weird sort of connection between these horrific things being done to cattle across as many as 21 states. In a letter from 1975, Senator Haskell was able to identify 130 of these strange, macabre cases in Colorado alone. All of the cases were eerily similar, which is unsettling considering the details. In most cases, the cattle would have had their left ear, left eye, rectum, and reproductive organs all missing, and all the blood was drained from the carcass, but there was no blood on the ground or around them, nor were there any footprints. How absolutely horrifying is that? Some people chose to believe that the cause for these was mysterious helicopters and UFOs, but there's a letter from Senator Curtis to the FBI director that says, quote, the series of incidents stretching from Oklahoma to Nebraska in which cattle have been dismembered in some kind of strange witchcraft cult. I'm not gonna lie, I don't think it was UFOs or witches that did it. It wasn't until 1979 that the FBI was granted jurisdiction to begin investigating these weird happenings, and when they did, they determined that most of the instances were a result of quote, normal predator and scavenger activity. And while that answer sounds a little fishy at best, the documents went forward to reveal that not all of the instances could be accounted for. Also, this idea of it being a completely normal scenario also contradicts reports that say the techniques used in these horrible instances were quote, very professional and sometimes even referred to as being conducted with surgical precision. I'm sorry, but a wolf or a coyote or a bear or whatever predator you want to say did this, ripping apart its meal isn't exactly a surgically precise operation. No arrests were ever made, and while it was deemed solved, a ton of mystery still surrounds these stories to this day. In our number 7 spot today, we have Acoustic Kitty. Apparently in 1967, the CIA was spending millions of dollars trying to make cats into spies. I don't know why they chose the one animal that does not care what you want it to do, but alas, they did, and Project Acoustic Kitty was born. The project basically involved implanting electronic spy equipment into real, living cats, who would then be trained to basically eavesdrop on unsuspecting people. This is another one of those Cold War era plans that was intended to be used on those in the Soviet Union. The project had a whole slew of issues, of course, however, because cats get hungry and distracted, and unfortunately the first time this plan was being tested, there was a catastrophic outcome. The cat got hit by a taxi, but the project of course was cancelled, and the researchers said that they believed they could train cats to move short distances, but that quote, the environmental and security factors in using this technique in a real foreign situation force us to conclude that for our intelligence purposes, it would not be practical. In our number 6 spot today, we have the Judgment Call. If you haven't heard of the name Stanislav Petrov before, maybe just take a second to whisper a quiet thank you to him, because he truly might have saved all of our lives with one moment of calm, cool decision making. In declassified records released in 1998, it became known that back in 1983, when Stanislav was a Soviet Union soldier, he opted not to fire nuclear missiles, despite the fact that it appeared that the United States had launched 5 missiles directly at his home country. He used his own personal judgment to assess and figured that it was a false alarm, and he was right. Having to make a call like that would be tough. The stakes are so high, but he honestly, in that one single moment, might have prevented a third and likely nuclear world war. I'm definitely glad that those documents became declassified so that the world could learn of this story. It kind of revives my faith in humanity just a little. Maybe not everyone just reacts without thinking. In our number 5 spot today, we have Operation Unthinkable. The title of this video says unspeakable, but the title of this operation says unthinkable, and honestly, both are kinda true. Declassified in 1998, the documents pertaining to this operation have to do with what could have been a completely different ending to the Second World War. The documents describe Russia as a quote, threat to Western civilization, and they also outline the possibility of a quote, total war against the USSR in the wake of World War II, and they state that the goal of the mission would be to, quote, impose upon Russia the will of the United States and British Empire. The document also revealed plans to utilize the newly defeated German military, as the document says that the Allied forces, quote, can count upon the use of German manpower and what remains of German industrial capacity. According to the documents, if followed through, this plan would lead to the elimination of Russia through either occupation of the metropolitan areas or, in even darker turns, until the Allied forces made such a decisive defeat of the Russian forces in the field as to render it impossible for the USSR to continue. In the end, the operation was deemed too hazardous, and it was decided that in order to win, it would take quite a long time and it simply wasn't worth the risk, so the idea was scrapped. In our number 4 spot today, we have the phone call. Not so much of a document and rather a phone call, but when the telephone calls of former President Lyndon B. Johnson were revealed, it also showed something darker. The calls showed that then presidential candidate Richard Nixon might have negotiated behind the back of the president with South Vietnam. South Vietnam apparently ended up pulling out of the Paris peace talks after being told that Nixon would get them a better deal once elected. You might be wondering why he did this, and apparently that is because Nixon was was concerned that an earlier ending to the war would end up derailing his election campaign, since the war was one of the most pressing campaign issues. In the end, Nixon did end up winning the election by less than 1% of the popular vote. For many years this was speculated and rumors were swirling, but once the phone calls were released, it seemed to confirm what many believed for years. In our number 3 spot today we have Starfish Prime. This is an operation that took place in 1962, with the documents discussing the outcomes being declassified in 1989, and the operation was a joint one between the US Atomic Energy Commission and the Defense Atomic Support Agency. Basically, they detonated a thermonuclear device in the sky above the Pacific Ocean. They launched it from the Johnson Atoll using the Thor rocket, and once at an altitude of about 240 miles, they set it off, which ended up producing a yield of about 1.4 megatons. The documents showed that the electromagnetic pulse was so powerful and widespread that it disabled not only most of the equipment that was set up to measure it, but it also took out streetlights and caused telephone outages in Hawaii, nearly 900 miles away. The electrons released caused an aurora that could be seen over most of the Pacific Ocean, and according to the documents, the quote visible phenomena due to the burst were widespread and quite intense, and apparently it was visible for days. In the end, it is said that the researchers weren't expecting such a powerful blast of electromagnetic pulse, and they also were not anticipating that the electrons from the blast would get stuck in the Earth's own magnetic field for months, possibly even years, but alas, they did. This went on to create a radiation belt around the planet that eventually went on to disable at least 6 satellites. So, that's great. In our number 2 spot today we have The Warning. On Tuesday, January 28, 1986, the Space Shuttle Challenger launched on live TV, but just 73 seconds into its flight, it disastrously disintegrated, taking the lives of all 7 people on board, which included high school teacher Krista McAuliffe, who was going to be the first non-military civilian in space due to the Teacher in Space program. Of course, investigations were immediately launched to figure out how this could have happened and what exactly went wrong. In fact, the president at the time, Ronald Reagan, appointed a special commission to investigate the causes, and as it turned out, the investigation report revealed that the disaster was, quote, an accident rooted in history. This basically confirmed that NASA had previously known about the problems that led to the destruction of the Challenger and the subsequent demise of the crew. The least surprised of all was perhaps engineer Robert Boisjoli, who apparently sent an inter-office memo months prior to the tragedy warning of the exact fate the Challenger would meet should they continue to choose to launch the shuttle in such cold weather. Quote, the result would be catastrophic of the highest order, he wrote. Quote, loss of human life. In our number 1 spot today we have Operation LAC. Operation LAC, which is short for Large Area Coverage, was a Cold War era project that involved the US Army Chemical Corps. Basically, it was a test that was designed to see whether or not it could be possible or feasible to taint a large area by dropping chemical agents from planes. To test this idea, they dropped, quote, a myriad of microscopic particles from planes, covering an area that is said to span from the Rockies to the Atlantic, from Canada to the Gulf of Mexico, so yeah, definitely a large area. In fact, it was so large that this is actually the largest test that the Chemical Corps had ever undertaken. According to the declassified documents relating to this operation, the test, quote, did not provide the Corps with nearly as much data as the Corps would like, and then it goes on to say that, quote, to obtain additional data the Corps planned further tests for the next fiscal year. Okay, that's a little daunting. While not necessarily the same operation, also in the Cold War era was a similar test conducted that targeted a neighborhood in St. Louis, Missouri. This test saw the area being sprayed with zinc cadmium sulfide. At the time, those local to the area were being told that, quote, the government was testing a smoke screen that could shield St. Louis from the aerial observation in case the Russians attacked. But of course, decades later, documents revealed that the tests were actually a part of a biological weapons program. And to make matters even worse, the zinc cadmium sulfide was linked to an increase in cancer among the residents of the neighborhood.